Down.
The women's tournament is quickly getting rushed, in my opinion. They announced this, and I think they're kicking themselves in the butt because they're rushing it too much. You have two outstanding matches that we've seen on back-to-back Dynamites. Both matches could, be high round matches. Well, Thunder is deserving of a Dynamite
No
spot
doubt.
every single time. Every single time. Layla Hirsch is clearly showing her growth. But last night's or 2 nights at Rio and D match should have been a finals. If they put Rio, gosh, dude, on the Japanese side, they could have put her on the Japanese side and ultimately done that. And I think that could have been a more powerful way of booking.
Given like some real noticeable star power on that. I'm not saying that there isn't star power on the Japanese side, but like recognizable to the AEW fan base, to the casual AEW fan, right?
For sure. In my opinion, that could have been a way to bring those matches to Dynamite as well. Maybe have her in that and have her matches on TV on Dynamite.
That's not a bad call, Bonds. Yeah.
But
for sure.
I mean, it's going to be a great match with Thunder, but yeah.
I just like, yeah, I mean, there's so much. You and I were going back and forth, and I know SPD, it's funny because women's wrestling I've been an advocate of women's wrestling before I even got married. So I'm going back over 5 years now. But you and I remember like, I would have arguments with you about like the talent of a Bailey or a Sasha Banks and stuff like that. And that was never your thing. You were always slow to come around. And now you're such a huge fan of what you're seeing. It's really fun for me because you're like, man, I wish they gave the women's tournament a little bit more time to breathe and that we got to see more of these matches on Dynamite because these women are incredibly talented. I mean, the showcase, and we'll get into that. We're going to talk about now that we've been able to see the Japanese side. I know that the team here, the Dukes of Dynamite, we've gotten some arrows slung at us too for not being all over the Japanese side of this tournament. Heaven forbid. Right. But we love what we were seeing on the US side, and we'll get into this whole thing now. Let's jump in, because
this isn't updated without Rio winning, so you can tell everything but Rio.
Oh God, dude, this is a sipper beer. You guys are gonna get me messed up tonight.
So let's talk about. I think we should talk about the Japanese side first because this is fresh.
Let's do it.
Saw Yuka Saka. I can't even read the names. We saw. Here's the winners. You got Emi,
Sakura,
Rio, and Aja Kong.
Yeah, so
you can read it for me.
Yeah,
Yuka
Sakazaki. Oh my God,
excuse me.
Yeah, Yuka.
We've seen Japanese side.
So
we got Yuka taking the first
Yuka and Emi. We've seen on AEW television before.
Right.
I actually miss Yuka quite a bit. I think that Yuka is fun and entertaining and adds sort of a light. Like, I don't know, there's a joy to her matches that are always it's cool to watch. And I think that if you put her in certain circumstances with some of the talent that we see on AEW, the current roster, she could have some really good low-key, like, talented matches. I'd love to see her in that. I would have loved to see her in a role with like that Riho was just in with Deeb, but I think that Deeb and Yuka could have a killer match.
Right.
To me, my favorite out of I'm going to throw my glasses on here. Pardon me while I pull an SPD. But my favorite was Emi. I forgot how much I missed Emi Sakura from AEW television, and I know that she was never given a showcase role on AEW, but like back when she was on weekly television, she kind of did the Freddie Mercury gimmick, and there was some silliness to it, but always her in-ring action, she kind of wrestles with a little bit more. She throws her weight, and I love that. She like throws her weight into moves. She has a little bit more intensity. She has that veteran presence to her. Right. I'm a fan of that, and I think that match, the Emi versus Venny, was my favorite match of the first round.
Venny was very surprising too.
Yeah, go ahead.
I really liked some of the moves that Venny was doing. Emmy's had some awesome chops, some brutal hair whips, and Venny was going to the top. She did the bit, or she or he, the way, whoever they, genderless wrestler, we looked more into this. Venny's a genderless wrestler.
Yes.
The big moonsault to the outside, which was probably the biggest high point of that first round on the Japanese point in terms of big moves, like risky moves like that. Yes, we saw some top rope moves, but like going to the outside. So I think that was like I agree. The Emmy and Venny match was the best back and forth, that could have gone both ways. It really did. To me, I watched the Aja Kong match today. I know she's a veteran of the business, but I don't see the draw factor. I don't know, man. It was just a slow match, and she was very slow moving, and it just didn't seem like jiving well for me in that moment personally. So the Aja Kong main event, or the last match of the tournament, really was kind of a disappointment for me. The Yuka Sakazaki match was great. There was a lot of great of those like backbending submissions, the 450 splash finisher, there's a cool like delayed vertical suplex that Yuka did. So like those first two brackets so the next match or next round, Emmy and Yuka I'm extremely looking forward to that. Those are the two front runners for me coming out of the Japanese side bracket for sure. I think either one can go to the finals, and I'd be happy with that for the Japanese side.
Bonds, why don't you jump in, because SPD and I watched this together in Jacksonville, and I think that he and I kind of had some very similar thoughts coming out of it. I thought he and I both were pleasantly surprised at what an incredible match that, because Venny we haven't seen much at all to this point.
Yeah, first time.
I kind of was like, oh man, I remember Emmy, and I like Emmy's style. I was very, very much impressed with that match. I'm a big fan of how that went. I was shocked, and I don't know about you, I'll let you take over and jump in, but I was shocked that Maki Ito lost, just because she seems to have the most buzz out of really anyone on the women's side from Japan, so especially on social. I mean,
that's why I was shocked too. That was the big one. Like social media all week was buzzing about Maki, and that was like, honestly, that was almost as strange as like on the US side when we saw Rio and Serena Deeb in the same round.
What'd you say?
Us as well.
Oh man!
What'd you just say?
But ultimately, I kind of like that this is kind of throwing some curveballs, this tournament. It's not been like, oh, we know who's going to win this round. We don't in a lot of instances. I think you guys both picked Serena last week.
No, we had a debate, and I lost the bet. I
picked Rio.
Gosh, rub it in, why don't you?
You got me that beer at Dynamite, so we're even.
All right.
So I like that there's been a couple curveballs, and that makes it more fun. When the booking is obvious, it's annoying. And I do think it's interesting that Yuka and Emmy have both been on AEW television before. I think that's it's smart booking in a lot of ways, because you have people that are recognizable. And so now, I would say Aja Kong is probably the least recognizable name out of everybody left, right? So we have a lot of folks that are left that people know about, and it's going to be for both sides good, because we're going to get more exposure for AEW in Japan and more exposure for Japanese wrestlers over here, and that's only going to help the business. So that's great.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I knew Aja coming into the tournament. I know she's a legend in Japan, and
I haven't watched one of her matches before.
Honestly, I'm gonna try to avoid talking. I wasn't overly impressed by that performance. I didn't think that, to be honest with you, I will say that the top of this tournament for the Japanese side, like SPD talked about, the Yuka and Emmy, that matchup is really intriguing to me now. Although I do see where they're going. I mean, you got Kong and Rose is like kind of the opposites, powerhouses on each side, and they stand out in a big way. So I do think that they're going to push those like powerhouse characters to be sort of the ultimate test or gatekeeper for the winners going forward. I think that again, I really hope that some of the rumors that are going on with the spoilers of what the women's tournament are just rumors. because I want this to be the coronation of the DMD, but I will say I do think that the way that this tournament has been booked is a showcase of what AEW is all about. There's that there's that, like, the surprises. They like to keep us on our toes, but there's always breadcrumbs and there's always something to keep us coming back for more.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I don't know about you guys, but I'm fascinated to see who comes out as the winner of this. Once I saw Thunder was in this, and once I saw Britt, I mean, obviously the US side got me geeked out about it, right? But once I got to watch that Japanese side, that first round of that, there are some talents there that are lurking, and it'll make for. I wonder who's going to emerge from that side of the bracket.
Yeah, I said this to you, and I stand by it. Watching the first round of the Japanese side and watching the first two matches just alone on the US side, to me, the US side is leaps and bounds stronger than the Japanese side at this point. I think it is a landslide victory for the US side in this tournament. When you have Thunder and Rio advancing already, those two are better than. You're right, Bonds. Those two are harder hitting, better in the ring combined versus any of those 8 performers on the Japanese side, in my opinion.
I will let you field
so far.
I will let you field the comments of hatred that we will get on our YouTube page for that take. I'll let you take those because there seems to be like this like anger that we don't love and obsess over the Japanese side. And quite honestly, after somebody called us out for not watching Riho in Japan, I started trying to find stuff on YouTube over the last and help me out, guys. Send us some links. I'd love to see it. I'd love to see.
That's what I told you to say. I said,
I did.
Send us. Well,
I would love to see it. Trust me. I love wrestling, so I'm not going to go into this with a closed mind, dude. Like, please, I'd love to see more. But I will agree in this sense. When I look at potential champions in this tournament, I think Serena Deeb's already a champion. She's out. All right. But Riho is a former world champion and clearly could become one. Immediately when we watched that match, SPD, you and I both were looking at each other like, dude, like these girls put on a clinic. I mean,
you were reminded why she was the first ever champion.
It was phenomenal. I was beating the drum for Deeb, like with SPD and I had that friendly bet. And I was like, dude, Deeb is such a polished pro. She's so freaking good. And again, it was one of those moments where you forget how good someone is when they're out of sight, out of mind. So for me, seeing Serena and Riho, but I think that Britt Baker is clearly championship material. Thunder Rosa, all of us, and I know we're not alone. The internet, IWC, getting tagged in a Thunder Rosa post was amazing. I loved that. It made me feel so good. She's amazing. I love Thunder. But Thunder could easily become world champion, and we all want that to happen. Nyla Rose, anytime, I mean, you put her in her presence alone, she commands that respect. And I know that I'm not alone when I say that Ty Conti is turning heads. I mean, Ty Conti is somebody who we all think has massive upside. So I hear you, SPD. I think that there's a lot to love about the U.S. side. I think that we should be very proud of the women that are representing the U.S. side in this tournament. And I think that there's no reason, like when you look at the way this bracket is established, they should be, whoever comes out of that side should be the favorite.
Absolutely. I mean, I would be happy with any one of those women fighting Shida at AEW Revolution for the title and ultimately winning, because whoever wins this should win the title. It's time for a fresh face, and congrats to Rio.
Wrestler of the week.
Wrestler of the week.
Wrestler of the week.
But here's my take. I know we all kind of felt a little bit of this, and just like they're gonna be rushing this tournament, and they're throwing him on a Monday night show, they're throwing him on a Sunday night
Sunday
show.
show.
And so this is what I think they're doing. And the more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm kind of behind it. They're testing the waters of if there's enough star power to carry their own show. So it's easy to evaluate that on something like YouTube, where you can count views
See,
and things like
you're
that.
right.
So you have the face of the women's division, Britt Baker. You have Nyla Rose, who was an absolute beast. You have two up and comers, Anna Jay and Tay Conti, and then you have the match we've been looking forward to on the Japanese side. And so these are this is essentially a must see episode that we're all going to be tuning in for. Absolutely. So I think this is a true, no better way to test it, because everyone likes a tournament. Everyone, there's more meaning behind the
Yes.
matches. And so
Good
this is a
call.
great way to test out a new possibility of a Monday night show special for women's only. The division is deep. So if they continue to do it this Monday, and maybe they'll do it next Monday, but I think now they're after Monday and Thunder's match on Sunday, they might be kind of caught up a little bit, but they still have a lot of things to get done in a short amount of time.
Beginning in
So
March, man.
if they show up on Monday and then within 24 hours they're getting 250,000 plus views, I would say that the following is there, and they can have something where they could confidently test out a Monday night 7 p.m. or Tuesday or something, an all women's special.
Or even like beyond that, SPD. I mean, we're all clamoring for another AEW show. I think that we all recognize the need is there, right? This roster has become, there's such a new promotion, but this roster has become so stacked and so deep, that they are in need of another show. So I mean, even if it's not just a women's only show, being able to have more than one women's match featured on your flagship show, this is an opportunity for us as fans to show that we're behind that movement, right? To show that there's a following and that there's a need for it, there's a desire for it.
Yeah.
Before we